And move into a special meeting of the Tourism Development Authority. And I'll hand that over to Mr. Scanlon.
Mr. Chairman, you have a series of budget amendments. One that you heard referenced at the public hearing. When we get to that, I can talk more specifically to that. The second budget amendment is the one that you heard spoke to at your public comment section. It is in your agenda package, and I can explain first the budget amendment itself. We have been, or the Board of Commissioners was requested by the Corolla community to move forward with implementing a paid or a combination fire system in Corolla. And we are making all efforts to move forward to have that implemented before the season starts. We've targeted May 1st, and so we have done things to move that forward, including advertising and starting to hire people. We were successful in obtaining what they call a SAFER grant. And top of my head, I don't recall the acronym, but that grant would only pay for personnel costs. It does not pay for any supplies, materials, equipment, personal protective equipment that you would need for fire services, number one. Number two, it would only pay for, in year one, 75% of the cost of the personnel. So we have a gap of the 25% of the cost of the personnel. And then since this is a new service, there's certainly some upfront cost. Probably the largest one is buying turnout gear for the 19 people we have to employ. So the $485,000 budget amendment is to provide the funding for these upfront costs, as well as to provide the 25% of the personnel costs from today to June 30th. The SAFER grant in year two only pays for 75%. In year three, it only pays for 25%. So each of the next upcoming budget years, there will be a portion of the service that is not covered by SAFER grants. So you'll see something similar to what the board ultimately decides to do in upcoming budgets. I think there was a question raised about the service district. When the service district is created right now, it will not impact this budget amendment. If we had created the service district back in December, the tax rate is only effective July 1st, and therefore there would not be a revenue source in the district until July 1st. That is the big reason why this is being brought to you in the fashion it is, because the district, which is we are working with you in the next couple of meetings, you'll be establishing it. It will not have the ability to generate revenue until, again, July 1st. As far as having it in occupancy tax, it is my opinion that I think the board can make an argument under the statutes that this is a qualifying expense. I was also under the opinion that, but perhaps mistakenly, that when the county was approached some 9 months ago about implementing the service, that there was suggestions or comments from the community that this would be an appropriate and acceptable place to go get to this balance. What we've heard tonight was perhaps that this amount, whatever it is, should be ultimately integrated into the district and the district tax pay for it. That is absolutely permissible. We can do a loan from either the general fund or another fund into the district, adjust the tax rate accordingly so the rate will not only cover the cost of providing the services, but it could now have a debt service to look at what that would be. And that is absolutely permissible if the board, and what we heard tonight was perhaps the community's asking, instead of using funds, actually increase the district tax to some degree to pay for it. And so as far as this budget amendment goes, if the board wants to look at or accept the suggestion that was made to you, we can pull this and bring it back to you at a future meeting to reflect it as a loan and payment to come out of the district tax. So if the board wants to go that, there is no harm in this coming back to you in a different meeting.
Real quick, the date, yep. April 15th to June 30, 2017. Is that supposed to say 18 by chance?
It should say 18.
Okay, because I was trying to.
Yeah, it should say 18.
So we were informed by an individual tonight that the community would like to see this as a loan.
Well, what you saw was, I don't know if all of the commissioners got an email, but there was an email that was sent to the county by one individual from Corolla suggesting that the general fund should loan this, and the nature of calling it a loan to me implies some kind of a payback.
Correct.
And I believe what you heard at public comment was another citizen who is a board member of CCA. I don't know if he was speaking for the CCA as a whole or if he was speaking as himself as a CCA member, but was challenging whether this was an appropriate use of occupancy tax. And I think he suggested that some kind of loan provision would be more appropriate. And so based on the email, and perhaps this appears to be a recommendation from the CCA, that we put it into a loan, that is absolutely permissible, and the board certainly can go in that direction. It will require probably some slight adjustment to what that district tax rate is, but we can do that.
Well, if I can, just for clarity, so the occupancy tax is an allowable use for this, is that correct?
It is, well, that is a determination by the Board of Commissioners.
Correct.
I believe there is a valid and viable argument that can be made that it falls under the categories of the general statutes to allow it to be an expenditure.
So this expenditure, if we allow it an occupancy tax, would not cost the residents anything. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, if we were to establish a loan, then it would cost the residents a tax. Is that correct?
The residents within that district would pay it back from whatever fund loaned it the money. Yes.
Okay.
We would have to up the agreed upon tax is basically 4 cents at this time to pay for these extra services going forward. If we were to loan it, we would probably have to go up an additional penny or two to pay back the debt service in addition to maintain.
That is correct. We have been talking about a 4 cent, but as we generate, what the real cost will be, it might be 4 or 5, and this could require maybe a half-cent addition or something when we look at. Because we have not, at this time, I have not looked at what we think the gap funding would be in year 2 and 3 under the SAFER grant. So we would look at those two, add it to this to get a full loan, and then we can adjust the tax rate accordingly.
So the concern I have with that is that two residents have come forward with that request. I don't know that they speak for all of Corolla.
But he is using his title.
Yeah, but we didn't hear anything from the CCA specifically.
Would we be better off pulling it just to make sure we?
And we certainly, I mean, if that's a question, we can pull it and ask the CCA.
I don't.
As I recall, when this was brought to the board initially, it was with a significant amount of data and polling that had been done to the residents of Corolla with the purpose of OCTAX supporting initial startup and some of the continuing operations where, if and where possible, as well as the possibility of a SAFER grant. That was presented from a data perspective, and I believe we all sat in on that work session where that data was presented to us, including the response rate and the methods by which that polling was done, email, snail mail, I believe were the two, and I believe there was a website that you could actually go on and participate as well. Typically, as I'm remembering, when the CCA stands for a position, we typically get a letter from the president of the CCA stating emphatically, this is the position of the CCA, good, bad, or indifferent. I have not seen that letter. And so with that in consideration, as well as being a property owner in Corolla, I've not received anything asking me where I stood on this new version of that. So I would suggest to you that two individuals speaking is not going to necessarily convince me that the community is what is asking for that.
I don't want to impose any more taxes on that district if they don't have any voice in it other than listening to two people. And I would agree with Mr. Beaumont. I haven't received a letter from him either yet on this. So,
Mr. White, have you been approached with anything in that regard?
The first I heard of it was the same as everyone else today. So, and while we're around that and this stuff, it was intimated that the rural center was not a tourist activity, and I think you might have something to say about that.
that's a destination.
Right.
Is your mic on?
Push here.
Sorry.
There you go.
No, it has become quite the destination in the equestrian world, and I believe in, and I'm speaking for Cameron, that almost every weekend that is available for those kind of events is totally booked up. And we're also it's generating a lot of interest for other events like the annual Bulldog show that they have and other things that are not equestrian related. It's growing. So I think you can certainly make the case that it is a tourist destination. It's a visitor destination.
Likewise, the number one complaint that we have all heard about going to destination or going to the rural center is I pass the road that it's sitting on, and if we had better signage, we would have better participation, number one, and or two, you don't have people slamming on the brakes at the last minute because they just flashed past.
And
So
Tamara, now correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a separate fund set aside for occupancy for advertisement that can only be used for advertisement. Would this not be advertisement? And I think we have there's more in there that you can spend.
I think a sign is the same as a billboard.
Okay,
It's a
yeah.
promotional.
So that's
it's a
totally, that would come out
promotional,
of a different
ish-
pot of money.
item.
And like
Well,
other,
occupancy tax,
like
but
other locations or tourist visits or visits from anybody is increasing there because of what you've been doing, the advertising, the billboards, etc. I didn't know we had something that said you have to have so many people at an event or so many people at a destination, whether it's a park, whether it's a county facility, whether it's something else. I thought, wow, it's increasing, and that's what we want.
That's
Participation.
the point, right?
And I believe the action that you're taking tonight with the approving the sign and also with the rental agreement, the sign is ready to go. We just have to get Mr. Natoli to sign the lease agreement, and hopefully we'll have that sign installed before the majority before the season really picks up. So people will be starting to see it, and we are going to change that billboard too, because the equestrian world knows who we are, and we're becoming well known there. We're going to change that board to reflect more of other things that you can do, like kayaking and fishing. So we'll be putting a little bit of a different bent on that billboard down at Powell's Point.
I think it's important. People understand going to the beach is not all the tourism there is. There are so many different types of tourism, from the ball fields over here to going there. If you're coming from outside the area to do something in this county, you are a tourist. And thank you, Tamron. You guys have done a great job of improving this place and bringing stuff there. It's great. It's great to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to comment about, because that was raised, whether that's a tourism destination.
Well, since we've assumed some of the operations of the historic Jarvisburg Color School, we kind of blew up Facebook a little bit in February and January, and I believe visitation has definitely increased. I don't have the exact figures for you right now, but I do know because of the attention that it's been getting, I believe we have 200 school children coming in soon that are going to stop by historic Jarvisburg. So we're becoming known in the region, and it takes time, but I really believe that we're growing it, and we have some other things planned that will get us out there a little bit more in the digital world. So
The next budget amendment is, again, moving money around within occupancy tax. It is to cover the county's responsibility associated with the recent installation of the playground equipment at the Corova Park. We were responsible for creating the safe fall zone. So what this really was hauling sand in and a border around the equipment. That project is now done, and the playground equipment is available for public use. The last budget amendment is another one of moving money around within the budget, is not creating any new money. And it's there to support some operational line items for the operation of the Whalehead Club itself. And I believe that's all of the budget amendments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on any of them.
Any questions for Mr. Scanlon?
Mr. Scanlon, let's go back to page 141, just because I want to make sure that we do amend that to read June 30th, 2018.
Yes, sir.
That's there. And say, for instance, down the road, we come up with something that we decide it wants to change, even though we've approved the money tonight or it's approved, we can make a change at any other time to make it a loan or change it around if something were to change. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
With that, I'll call for a motion.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passed unanimously. I'll